back handspring. Super cool by itself and even more useful when you throw it into a combo. Back handspring is a great move you can add into pretty much any combo, and it'll give you speed, power, and overall flair just to get you a better setup for a bigger trick. In today's video, we're gonna break down a super simple progression you can learn your very first back handspring today. What is going on, my Ninja Squad? Welcome back to Summer 2022 Tricking Tutorial Tuesdays. Now, last week we covered how to get into tricking, and we also learned the Makaku. So if you haven't seen that video already, I'm gonna link it up right in this corner. Make sure you go check it out, because we're gonna be using what we learned last video, the Makaku, in order to learn our back handspring progression in today's video. So if you haven't already, pause the video, go check this video out, come back to this video once you can do a Makaku, and then finish it. I'm also gonna link that video at the end of this one if you'd like to watch it after. All right, so back handsprings are really cool. You can do them by themselves as a standing trick. You can throw them into a combo. You can use them as a setup move for bigger tricks. Into every back handspring, there are 4 key steps. We have the dip, we have the jump, we have the push off, and then we have the landing. Now in a little bit, we're gonna break down exactly how you can work on each of those areas specifically, but first we're gonna get started with the basic progression. All right, so if you watched the last video, then your Makaku should be looking like this. You should be feeling relatively comfortable doing it at this point, and this is where we're gonna start learning the back handspring. Now, like I mentioned in the previous video, using a one-footed takeoff while the other foot pushes on the ground is gonna be easier to learn the Makaku, so that's how I recommend you learn it. But in order to transition to the back handspring, we're going to need to learn how to take off of 2 feet at the same time. So step number 1, we're going to start the Makaku same way that we did before, except try to take off of both feet and land on both feet at the same time. Now again, just like before, if you need to do this kind of slowly, walking around the sides, going over the side a little more at an incline each time until you can do it completely vertical, that is fine. Basically, you want your Makaku going from looking like this to this. All right, so now you can do a Makaku pushing off from both feet and landing back on both feet. The second step is we're basically gonna start to get rid of that initial kind of like squat position where we're just kind of sitting on the ground and then waiting to push off. Because when we look at an actual back handspring, the dip and the jump are kind of a combined movement. We don't start just kind of sitting on the ground like we have been from the Makaku. It's much more of a dynamic jump into it from a higher position. So that's what we're gonna start working on. So again, a nice simple progression for this. Start with the Makaku that we just finished with. So 2 feet on the ground, your butt's kind of low, put your hand there, pause for a second, and then you jump. Now gradually what I want you to think about doing is decrease the amount of time that your hand is actually on the ground for. So instead of sitting down, putting your hand there, just waiting, and then jumping, try to just sit, put your hand on the ground, and as soon as your hand touches the ground, then jump. You're gonna wanna keep progressing this until you're kind of jumping backwards onto that hand and then jumping off of your hand back onto your feet. Again, if you need to do this kind of around the side and an angle at first instead of completely vertical, that's fine. But basically, that's the whole progression. Once you're feeling comfortable with that, you basically have like a really crappy kind of one-handed back handspring. All right, so at this point, there's really only one thing left for us to do to turn this from like a weird off-axis back handspring slash Makaku type of deal into the full thing. Now granted, you're probably not gonna have the best form when you do this, but to get it to be a full back handspring, we're just gonna need to incorporate that second hand. So this one is definitely easier starting going kind of over the side. So remember, we're leading with that dominant hand, whichever side that is for you. In my case, it's my left hand. I'm leading with that left hand, kind of jumping back onto it. Start swinging that right arm a little bit around, or if you're the opposite, then swing your left arm a little bit around to the side. You don't even need to touch the ground at first. Just kind of getting used to engaging that opposite side as you're swinging your arms back behind you is going to help this make it easier. So gradually do this enough times where it's feeling comfortable, and then try to get the hand to the ground. Try to touch the ground. Even if you're still going to the side, that's fine. Eventually you want to be basically doing the Makaku that we just learned with one hand, except tapping both hands down on the ground. And once you can do that, it's as simple as just getting it more and more vertical. So instead of just going over to the side, think about swinging your arms back behind your head. It should be a gradual progression from this kind of motion, going up and more vertical each time you do it until you're doing a back handspring. And there you have it. You just did your very first back handspring. Now granted, it might not look the best, might not feel the best, but that is literally it, guys. Simple steps from taking your Makaku to a back handspring. Basically a gymnast now. All right, so let's take a second and go through a couple common mistakes that people make in their back handspring. and what it kind of looks like, because it honestly might be looking kind of like yours. All right, so the first biggest thing that people don't do correctly is the arm swing. They don't swing their arms all the way up by their ears. So basically, you end up with these like little T-Rex looking arms that only come out to about here. Now I know that all of us might not have passed geometry, but think about it like a math equation for a second. If your arms only get out to here, that means you have to rotate so much more for your arms to get around to the ground, because that's what we want, right? We don't want to land on our heads. But if you get your arms up to here, you only have to rotate 180 degrees. Compared to like here, you have to rotate like 270 degrees. You gotta flip so much more, man. You just make it harder for yourself if you don't swing your arms all the way up by your ears. Plus, it gives you a lot better push off of the ground when your arms are up here as opposed to down here. You wanna basically be landing in a handstand position, and that's kind of hard to do when your arms are in front of your chest. So tip number one, make sure you really swing those arms up all the way above your head by your ears. That's gonna help you get it around. All right, and tip number two, the second biggest mistake that I see people make during a back handspring, and that is confusing it with a backflip. What I mean by this is that people just think about tucking their legs in like they need to get around super fast or something. If you tuck your knees in, you're gonna land super short. Your feet are gonna land really close to your hands. You're gonna be like a crouched little like leprechaun goblin position. It's not gonna feel good. It's not really gonna look good, and you're definitely not gonna be able to throw any kind of trick out of it. What you need to do is think about your body is like a whip. All right, you want to be nice and long. Let your legs hang in front of you. Let them be long and like a whip. You don't necessarily need to be actively like shooting your legs out straight, but you need to not tuck your knees in. All right, if you tuck your knees in, your feet are going to land really close to you, and it's not going to be long. You want your back handspring to cover distance, right? That's what gives you the power to do bigger tricks out of it. So keep your legs long, kind of flowy like a whip. Let them fly out and over the top of your head and land behind you. Now there's a lot of other tips I could give you guys about how to fix your back handsprings, but those are like the two basic big ones that I see a lot of people make. So if you fix both of those and you do the progression just like we covered in today's video, you're gonna be doing back handspring chains in no time. Now it's really important to make sure you practice the move, because it is a prerequisite for learning other tricks like the backflip, which everybody wants to be able to do. I highly recommend you learn this first, especially because next week's Tuesday tutorial is gonna be the backflip, and you're gonna need to be able to do a back handspring in order to follow that progression. So make sure you can do this. Follow this video along, play it again if you need to. Like I said, if you haven't learned how to do the Makaku yet, make sure you check this video out. It's a whole introduction to tricking, how to get started learning your first flips on the ground, and it teaches you step by step how to do the Makaku, and then you can come right back to this one and learn the back handspring. As always, give me a thumbs up if you found this helpful, and subscribe so you don't miss another tutorial. And until next time, I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.